Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, boys. I am one of your co-hosts, Connor Nielsen, and joining me is the Comics Kid 2099. How are you doing, Comics Kid?
I'm doing very well, Connor, and yourself?
I am also doing well. This is a podcast where, at one point in time, the Comics Kid and I took a journey all the way through every episode of Twin Peaks, and we kind of enjoyed doing this. And there's not a whole lot of Twin Peaks to talk about, so now we just talk about film and TV shows that feature an alumni from the show Twin Peaks. Today's episode is the fifth episode of the 2013 through 2000 or 2014 through 2015 television show Wayward Pines. It is the fifth episode called The Truth, and this was directed by James Foley, who directed one of the episodes from the second season of Twin Peaks. Comics Kid, why don't you tell us a little bit about Wayward Pines?
Okay, this particular episode, there are basically three subplots. The sheriff of this town is trapped in the woods, hunting and being hunted by things. Then you have the mom who gets a job as a realtor, and her first mission is to give a house away to some guy. And then you have their son who is having trouble fitting in, or is he? And he is possibly being indoctrinated into a cult. And that's basically all I can tell you about the series just from watching this episode. After finishing this episode, I did look into like the overall premise of the series. And there are some more things we'll get into as spoilers. There's actually like, if you're looking to get into the series, I would recommend don't listen to this podcast because there are some gigantic spoilers that are given away in this episode. But just the like elevator pitch, those are the three things going on with this episode. But Connor, you and we had never watched this series before, and I contemplated, like, I think I had told you, I don't remember if this was on air or off the air, but I said, if I enjoy this, that I will probably go back and, like, watch the whole thing. And at the end of the episode, I wasn't sure if I enjoyed it or not. I think it was a mistake for me to choose this episode because when I was looking back at previous things we did in a podcast, there were like the first episode of The Nanny and the first episode of Birds of Prey. And the Nanny, not so much, but like when you have a show like this, the first episode is usually going to have a whole lot of exposition that is going to catch everybody up. You might, have the mom will say to their kid, "Oh, first day of college, huh, kid?" And it's like, yeah, we all know that, but we have to say it in dialogue so that the audience can pick up on it. Or we would pick like random episodes of like Riptide or Sex in the City. And regardless of what I thought of those series, it wasn't a very high concept. It was people talking and doing the sex or people solving mysteries with their two fists. And so it wasn't a particularly complex series in either case. Or like even, the last time we talked about 21 Jump Street, which is not a very complicated series either. Every episode, my understanding is every episode was pretty standalone. And so with this is, I think, the first time where we have just jumped into a series and it's like one of those like definitely a 21st century series with a lot of continuity. And if you don't start from the beginning, you're probably going to be lost. And I felt lost through most of this. Now, there was a lot of stuff that I felt like was stuff that was being introduced in this episode that I wasn't lost about. But also, I think that would have hit home a little better for me if I had watched the previous four episodes. I've been talking a lot. What did you think of this episode?
Yeah, so when you had picked this, I was a little like curious about whether this was every episode is an open and shut sort of case, something like Criminal Minds or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something, and or if this was going to be like your Breaking Bads, your Losts, your Twin Peaks. But when it came, I was figuring it would be a sort of Twin Peaks kind of situation, mostly because it's called Wayward Pines, and I look at the poster. And I'm like, this looks like it's very heavily influenced by Twin Peaks. But from what I understand, the first season was based on a trilogy of books. So I don't know if what we're looking at is the end of book one, middle of book two, or what. But yeah, this is very much chapter 5 in an ongoing series. So if anyone listening is a Wayward Pines fan, just full warning, you're probably going to hate this discussion. So honestly, I don't even know what what I will think of the discussion. Look, I'm just going to talk about what I saw. I walked in on episode 5, and um, I wasn't crazy about it. I think that like even beyond just stuff that happened in the story, there are stylistic things about this episode that just annoyed me, and they annoy me whenever they show up and stuff. And so it felt like Baby's First isn't that crazy kind of narrative, and
Mhm.
um I just I don't know, like it's not the kind of thing I'm into. And I was kind of wishing I would have, because when you had picked this episode, I was thinking one of us was going to have to go back and watch the first 4 episodes, and I thought that was going to be me. But then my last week was a lot busier than I thought it would be, and then neither of us ended up doing it. But honestly, like if I had gone back to watch the beginning, I don't even know if I would have made it to episode 5, personally speaking. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I guess we can talk about the stuff going forward, because I think this will be a pretty easy thing to break down, because it is only 3 subplots that we can talk about pretty much in isolation with one another.
Mhm.
Um, but it's all exposition. So
Yeah.
um,
Definitely one subplot is all exposition, and then the other one is a whole lot of Matt Dillon like looking grim in a forest, like oh my arm, and then like the mom. Yeah, anyway, so it sounds like you absolutely hated this, and I was more ambivalent to it.
I don't want to give off the impression I hated it.
Okay.
I could have hated it, but like it's one of those things where like I'm not a TV guy. I think
Hmm.
I should probably get this out there. I'm not a TV guy, and so when I say like I don't think I would have made it to episode 5, that shouldn't be me calling into question like how good or bad this episode or this show is entirely. That's not me saying this is awful. What that means is that's 4 hours of my life that I have to dedicate to 4 episodes of this show,
Hmm.
and I could watch those 4 hours of TV, or I could watch 2 movies instead. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? And so
Yeah,
like that's what I'm kind of getting at when I say I don't know if I would have made it to episode 5.
I hear you. Why don't you, if you don't mind, why don't you get into the stylistic choices that annoyed you? I'm kind of curious about that.
Okay, so between the two of us, I'm obviously, I like David Lynch. um, I like, air quotes, weird stuff. Um, I like that kind of stuff. And so there is a difference in my mind though, and this is where I feel like I'm gonna sound like a pompous douche. So I just want to apologize if I do come across as a little elitist. I don't mean to. But like there's a kind of like style when people want to make stuff that is weird that just doesn't feel very authentic to me. It feels like it's trying to like go through the motions, and usually this manifests in people with wide eyes, giving blank performances, saying vague things, and generally behaving in a way that nobody would behave in the real world, and everyone around them acting like it's normal, and the one or two main characters going, "What? Why is everyone acting so weird?" And then everyone around them going, "What are you talking about? They're completely normal." And then the audience goes, "What?" Like I don't know. It's like I don't have like I feel like I realize what I'm saying. It sounds very anecdotal, like I'm just kind of stabbing in the dark. I don't have a diagnosis for this, and maybe someday I will. But I am just kind of throwing out vague kind of things that could describe a handful of whatnot. And it sounds like what I am describing could be like describing a David Lynch thing, but I don't feel like I am. And a David Lynch thing, like the tone and atmosphere of just the way it's made and the sound design and like the camera angles, like it all just feels so calculated to like be uncomfortable to the audience and the people in the whatever you're watching. There's a uniformity to the performances, so that if one person feels like an alien, everyone kind of feels like an alien. Or if there is like one person who really sticks out in a David Lynch thing, they're weird to everyone else too. I'm thinking of Lost Highway. There's like the mystery man. Well, only one person really sees the mystery man at one time. So like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like he shows up at a party and then Bill Pullman's like, what's up with this guy? And people going, oh, that's my hairstylist, and it's this guy who looks like Satan, and they're like, that's just Blake, he's just doing his thing. That's not the case in Lost Highway. In this though, it's like, if I am a child and there is like this like woman who looks like she escaped a mental asylum giving me some kind of indoctrination thing,
Mm-hmm.
like I am kicking that person in the face and trying to get out of the room as fast as possible. Like, how old are these kids supposed to be? Are they in middle school? Are they in early high school? Like, how old are they supposed to be? Because I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm just kind of rambling and not really doing a good job of articulating my thoughts. But like, this show is full of, or like at least this episode, primarily like the subplot that takes up half of the episode, and a little bit of another subplot too. Just like is so full of people acting weird, and it makes me question how this society has even been able to function if everyone just acts this weird. So that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yes. In the episode, it doesn't do a great job of communicating this, but like I said, I looked into this series a little bit after watching it, and apparently this town, like once you make it into this town, you have trouble leaving. Like you can't leave. And so I guess part of the reason, like, because the three main characters of this episode, they're like each kind of doing their own little investigation, and like especially the mom, and to an extent the son also, like for example, the mom is talking to the guy that she is supposed to give a house to. And then the nurse like walks in and acts creepy, and then she leaves and is giving them the side eye. And none of the people in this town are making any effort to hide the fact that there's something weird going on. When the mom gets back to her new boss and she says, so every resident in this town came here through a car accident. Like me and my husband and son, we had a car accident and woke up in Wayward Pines. And like everyone, like at one point, the other students who are going through this cult indoctrination thing, they're also saying like, yeah, it was a car accident, or it was a vehicular, whatever. And like when she says that to her boss, if I was trying to keep these new people from like investigating and trying to figure out what's going on, I would say, well, golly gee, I had no idea. That never really crossed my mind. And then I would just like drop it. But instead, this guy says in a sinister voice, if I were you, I wouldn't look into that too much. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, these three people are like trying to investigate, and everyone in town doesn't want them to investigate. But at the same time, it seems like if they do investigate, like, there's nothing that they can do about it. But if I'm thinking, if I was one of these town folks, I would try to like keep them away from their investigation, but not look like a crazy person, like a evil, sinister person while I'm doing it. Like I would try to look normal and keep them away from their investigation, but that's not at all what's going on here. The boy, there's this girl who is interested in him for some reason, and he says, at my old school, everybody laughed at me and called me a weirdo. And she says, well, that's not how it's like here. Here, we're all in it together. And I'm just like, okay, that's weird and creepy. Like you said, like if I was this boy, I would, and I'm willing to give him just a smidge of a pass because he's already made a big deal to his mom about how like nobody likes him and nobody wants to be friends with him, and now he's like got this open pass to like here everyone can be your friend. And so like at the end of the episode, it's kind of leaving it ambiguous. Is he on board with this town, or does he want to get out of town as fast as he can? Like it kind of leaves it up in the air, but I can kind of see where the son would buy into this. But like the mom definitely would be weirded out and would be trying to get out of this town with how everyone else is acting. And nobody in town is making an effort to try and act like this is a normal town.
Yeah, like there's an aspect where you're talking about like, if I were you, I'd stop asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, how about like I know like if my brother's listening, he might be pounding his head against the wall. There's something I'm trying to think that is like this, that kind of does this a little bit better, where if somebody's trying to investigate this, like where they're living, something's not quite adding up, and then conveniently people will just show up with like, oh hey, I need you to help me with this like thing, neighbor. Why don't you help me clean my gutters? And it's like there's always something coming up to like distract the main character from doing their investigation.
Well,
But
you know what it
it's always
is.
under the guise of like some kind of activity or chore or something. But what's that?
I didn't like this as much as you did, but WandaVision did a better job of this, I think. Like
Yeah,
anytime like Vision is trying to figure out what's going on, then like the neighbor will come up and be like, "Hey, buddy, like neighborhood watch, right?" Or like, "Hey, I'm just trimming the hedges," and like Vision would still know, like, okay, something weird is going on, but that show did a better job of like everybody is kind of trying to keep them from looking into this better than this did.
that's a good. Yeah, I think that's maybe what I was thinking of. Like that's like a thing where the weird, creepy aspect of Suburbia, that's like a like in that show that did it better because like the show like the show itself is kind of made to be like this is kind of creepy, right? But like nothing about the performances are kind of indicating that it's like it's supposed to be creepy.
Hmm.
It's not like the neighbor is like having 1,000 yard stare going, Vision, give me a hand.
Hmm.
And where Vision would go, you're acting weird. No, bye.
Hmm.
But like so like this kind of plays into another thing. Like I don't care about like Suburbia. It's kind of crazy. Like I don't like that kind of like uh genre sort of like commentary. I know this might sound rich coming from me, the guy who loves Twin Peaks, the guy who loves Blue Velvet, but those don't just say, "Is it Suburbia kind of weird?" They're not leaving it at that. Like I think when you get to like Blue Velvet, like they say Suburbia, it's kind of weird, but then they use that as a jumping off point for what I think is a pretty cool neo noir coming of age movie. And like the setting is sort of just like the first tier, and there's like a bunch of stuff going on beneath the crust. And with Twin Peaks, like like again, like the kind of like Suburbia's kind of weird is like yeah, and then you get to learn about the people, and there's a lot more going on. This though, like, and I know I just watched one episode, but but it is like right now, like I don't understand if this is episode 5. What's been happening for the first 4 episodes?
Yes, that was
Like,
my question.
like, like, how are these the only 3 people like asking questions? I don't buy it. Like, and I know there's like another guy who she has to show a house to, who's also like kind of curious, but like, what about Big Bill? Like, it's like one of those things where it's like it feels like aliens came up with this society, but then we find out aliens didn't come up with this society. So if aliens didn't come up with the society, why do you just give someone a job who has no reason for needing this job after the last person who had the job just mysteriously dies? That
Hmm.
person's not going to like unless that person is investigating what's going on, they're not going to accept that job. Like I don't get it.
Yes. It not only does it feel like Aliens created the town of Wayward Pines, it feels like Aliens created the series Wayward Pines, but it's aliens who do not have a lot of experience with like workshopping a story idea. I'm going to get right into spoilers. Okay, so if you, by some miracle, have made it this far in this podcast and you are still thinking about watching the show, please abandon ship right now. Okay, so the series is apparently allegedly set in like 2013 2014, but then during this subplot where the boy is in school and he's getting indoctrinated or whatever, they give them coins and the boy says it's like Roman coin, like it's super old, it's like 2000 years old. And then she says, oh yes, scratch off the dirt from the coin, my friend. And then he does, and it's like, what? This says it's from the year 2095 AD. What? It's a quarter with George Washington's face on it. What? And she's like, yes, that is what it is. And I'm not. This is not an exaggeration. That is about how this woman is acting. Like Connor said, she is nuts. And if I was either of these students, I would run screaming like that guy or that woman in the first episode of Twin Peaks who's running through the courtyard right before the announcement's made. Like that's what I would do. I just run out the door, just scream through the halls, like. But she says, okay, that first of all, she showed them these pictures of like werewolves and said we call them Abbeys for like Abbey normal.
Oh my
And
god, I hated this part of it. Yeah, but continue.
And she says they're unkillable, and if you run into a whole pack of them, you're dead. And meanwhile, it's cutting to footage of this kid's dad who's wounded out in the forest, and there's at least two or three of them out in the forest, and then nothing happens. And then yeah, and well, but then she says it is not the year 2014. It is actually the year 4023, and yeah, that's it. And then we have like another 10
Oh,
minutes of episode. Oh, go ahead, because
I was gonna say like the part of that scene that like, so I hated her performance. Like I like it was like nails on a chalkboard every time she was talking. Like I hated it. That's the part of the episode that I did hate. Like I will just be straight up about that. And it's she's like, they're called abbeys. I can't remember what they're supposed to say, but because I just recently watched Death Proof, they're like Abernathy. So um, yeah, the abbeys. They they're evolved from a mammal. Do you know what mammal it is? It's a mammal you know very well. I'm like, oh my god, I get it. And all the kids are like, duh. And then she clicks the next slide and it says Homo sapiens. Just, I bet you know what it is now. I'm like, God, this is hurting me.
so when you said like her performance is like someone who came out of like a mental institution, you're not far off. Like the part where at one point she says, kids, now that I've dropped this bombshell on you, now that you realize you're living 2,000 years in the future somehow, you cannot tell your parents, because the last kid who told their parents, his parents tried to kill, they killed themselves. They like, committed suicide. They turned on the car in the garage. But the way she's describing it, it's like she is enjoying talking about this, and she's getting really animated with her hands while she's doing it, and it's weird. Like the episode is definitely trying to go for like, this is a weird cult. Like after she's done telling them about this, they go into a room, it's dimly lit, everyone is holding a candle, and they start like banging their fists on a table, and it feels like a cult scene, and it is weird. But if I was one of these kids, I would, like you said, I would be weirded out like as soon as it started, because they take you into this white room that looks like from A Clockwork Orange or something, and like she turns the lights off and she's lowering the screen thing, and I'm thinking something really weird is going to happen. Like it again, it if I was one of these people, if it was so important to me and whoever I'm working with that the next generation, that these kids, they are the future of the human race, then I would try very hard to act like a normal person, and I wouldn't be a weirdo creep telling them, the last kid who told his parents, they killed themselves. Like, I wouldn't do that. I would try very hard to impress on them, this is how important it is. It was really awful when those two killed themselves. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's not acting like
Yes.
she's acting like she knows that she is a bad guy in a movie.
Yes. And then it's like you meet the guy who's behind it all, and it's Toby Jones, and he more or less is acting normal. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't like. Okay, we are really out of order here. So, do you want to tackle one subplot apiece? I guess we're kind of tackling the first subplot is about the child.
Yeah,
For
let's go ahead and do you have anything else to say about the kid subplot? Because I have some like really broad questions about the premise of the series, but what do you have to say about the kid and that
Well,
subplot?
I guess just for context to anyone who doesn't care about the show and is listening to this, so all of the subplots are connected because they are like it's all like members of a family. There's Matt Dillon, there's his son and his wife. Um,
His wife looks like Terry Hatcher circa Lois and Clark, and his son looks like a shrunk down version of Dr. Reed from Criminal Minds.
yeah.
Just did you think so, or is that just in my head? Because
That's just. I mean, I was gonna say he looks like Boy Joey King, but like that's a. I mean, that's a good one too. Because he has like dark brunette hair, but like bright blue eyes.
mhm.
And he's sitting next to a girl who has like dark brown hair and bright blue eyes. And I was like, are they supposed to be like siblings? Because
Mhm.
those aren't exactly common traits that go with one another.
Right.
But she looked like Felicity Jones, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
But but uh, but like like a teenager. So like it was one of those things where like okay, so these all three of these subplots are connected because they're members of a family. And the kid is going to school. The mom is just kind of a stay-at-home housewife, and the dad is like the new sheriff or a cop or something. From what I'm led to believe about the previously on segment, Matt Dillon is investigating. Like, I guess Wayward Pines is just a little crazy, so he's trying to figure out what's going on, and he's ventured outside the city somehow, and he's in the woods, and the son goes to school. Every place is under surveillance here, and while the son is going to school, he's also like going through what is called initiation, which is basically like an exposition dump. And then the mom is I guess a stay-at-home mom, but then she gets a job that is just like straight up given to her, like, oh, the last person who had this job died, you now have a job giving people real estate, just like straight up giving people real estate. So that those are the three subplots for context, and so we've largely talked about one of them. Regarding the boys subplot, I have nothing much more to add beyond, like, I feel like this kid should, like, all three of these children should be a lot more like rebellious than they are. I feel like every kid at the school should be a lot more rebellious than they are. And like, now that I've gone through like the initiation with the children, I don't get why they're all so subservient and obedient. Like, I don't get it. So yeah.
At least one of these three would have cracked, would have like screamed and like, bring in the med people. We need to sedate her or something. Or it doesn't have to be a her. It could have been the other guy. Like, one of them would have been like, this is too much. Like, my mind has peeked into the abyss and the abyss looked back. Like, I cannot wrap my mind around everything you've just told me. But they all three take it pretty well.
And like, but like, this is like 111 of them taking it pretty well. Like, I assume, like, none of, like you said, there's like maybe someone who just like can't take it. There's like, they have like a nihilistic response to it. Maybe you have some people who just straight up don't believe it. Like, I don't, like, there's so much here that I have to give them that I think by the fifth episode of a show, I just couldn't give them. Like, I don't know.
My big question is, so we find out that this series takes place in the year 4022 or something like that, and that something happened, some kind of cataclysm where most of humanity died, and what was left of humanity evolved into these werewolf creatures, and then some of humanity was saved. And here's where I'm going to be throwing question marks all over the screen, I guess. Like, they were put into suspended animation, and they woke up and in this town, and this guy was like, the Toby Jones somehow knew that all this was going to happen, so he put all these people in suspended animation, I guess.
Well, he put them in car crashes first, I guess.
Yeah.
All of them in car crashes.
So I don't know why. Like, I mean, like, if I'm trying to save humanity, if I'm like a crazy rogue doctor, I'd like, gas the prison, and then like, go in with the people, my mercenary team that I've hired, and then like break all these prisoners out of prison. And then when they wake up, then it's like, hey, welcome to Mayberry, neighbor. And then if I'm a prisoner, I'm like, well, this is better than bread and water in a 6x6 cell. So I guess I'm going to try, like, I don't know, maybe that's dangerous because they're prisoners, but like, this seems like it's just an extra step of, I'm going to engineer however many car crashes, and then these people will wake up in this town. Like, I'm confused. Like, I'm sorry, like, I'm speechless. So, like, he has them, I guess he's releasing all the people in this town, like, one at a time, because the wife asks her boss at the real estate company, how many people move to this town? And he says 1 or 2 trickle in a month. So if he is telling the truth, then Toby Jones has a big room full of people that survived car crashes, and he's waking up like 1 or 2 of them a month for some reason. And all of these car crashes are from 2014, I guess. And so why did he wait 2,000 years to thaw these people out? Are they all from 2014? Like, that's a big question. Like, what if this kid asks somebody like, hey, have you ever heard of the Goo Goo Dolls? And they're like, no, man, I'm really more into Looking Glass or something like that. And then it's like, Looking Glass? My mom was into Looking Glass, or something. I don't know. Like, that's a bad example. But like, are all these people from the same decade? And if so, how and why did this guy only freeze people in that particular moment? What was the crisis that he's trying to save these people from? How did he know it was coming? There's so many questions I have. This, as a premise, does not make any sense to me because all of the questions that follow the revelation do not make any sense. There is no way that any of this could make any sense to me, no matter how it's
Well,
answered.
it would need to be like a lot of the information we get here is not what we are led to believe. Like
Yeah,
maybe it's not 2,000 years from now, because how does Toby Jones live for 2,000 years unless this is like a weird clone thing or something?
yeah,
Um, like you know what I mean? Like there has to be some kind of, this isn't what, this information we got. It turned out to be a lie, which it's not really something I'm a big fan of in long form entertainment. Um, that sounds like that's the kind of stuff where it's like we need to give people the illusion of an answer to satiate their curiosity, and it's really just there to prolong, a few more episodes, and then we'll give them the real answers. And I just don't really like that. But of course, this is all conjecture. Like I don't know, and quite frankly, I don't really care to know. But because it's like I'm sure, like if I ever go back and watch all of this, I might look back here and be a little annoyed with myself or whatever. But like the fact of the matter is, like the answers and like the this and the that and like the what's really going on here or whatnot. To me, those are all secondary to just the experience of what is happening in an episode and how effective it is at being conveyed to an audience member.
hmm
Like you can watch any episode from like the first 3 seasons of Lost, and even though you'll probably be confused about what's kind of like going on in the context, you would probably think that was still a pretty good episode of TV, even though I didn't really know all of what was going on. Same thing
yeah,
with Breaking Bad. Same thing with any other show like that's really really good, right? It's like if you need to know every little piece of information in order to enjoy an episode of a TV show, even though like look, like they have a previously on at the beginning. They have like like flashbacks to kind of try to provide context in order if you're like a new like viewer dropping in. Like they are trying to make this palatable to an audience member. And if somebody loves the show and they're listening to this podcast and they're saying, well, if only you watched it like all the other episodes, then that's the only way you can have an opinion on this episode. I disagree. I watched this episode. I can have an opinion on this episode, even though I can acknowledge a little bit of ignorance on my part because I hadn't watched other episodes. There is still like, if I watched this episode out of context and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I wonder what's going on in the other episodes. And that's a valid opinion. Shut up. Like, no, it like, yeah. So, I don't know. Like, I just kind of went off there for a second, but I don't
no,
really have
yeah.
anything else to say right now.
That's a good point about Lost. I was thinking about Lost when watching this, and admittedly, part of that is because last night I watched the first episode of a TV series from around the same time called Alcatraz. Had Hurley from Lost, and it was also executive produced by J.J. Abrams, and so Lost was on my brain. And then watching this, I was thinking of Lost and how, like, you're right, especially early in Lost. You don't know what the smoke monster is. You don't know who the others are or what they want. But as a specific unit of television, you're getting a good, complete story. In this episode, Sawyer is, he's a jerk to Kate and Jack, and then we get flashbacks that show, spoilers, his dad was a con artist, or his mom was killed by a con artist, or whatever, and then he became that figure. Like, and so it's like, okay, this is a good little character moment for him. Even though we don't know a lot of the big picture stuff, we're getting a good small picture episode. And
Yeah.
this episode, I don't necessarily feel like it's doing that. Admittedly, maybe I would feel that if I had gotten to know these characters a little bit. But like you said, watching this, I was thinking like, this feels like this would be like an end of episode 1 reveal. I'm really, really curious what happened in the previous 4 episodes, because this is like a gigantic bombshell. And I have no idea how many episodes are in this season. I
I
don't
think
think.
only 10. So this is
Okay.
like the halfway reveal.
Okay. And since you're not going to, you're not going to watch the show again, are you?
Probably not. I know it
Okay.
was executive produced by, and like the first episode is directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And like, I don't know, like I might just for the curiosity of Shyamalan watch it, but probably not.
Okay. Well, spoilers. Season 2 has almost a completely different cast. And so apparently, originally, this was meant to be a mini series. And then they said, wait, let's do a second season. But by that point, most of the actors had already signed on to do other roles. And so season 2 has like a very disjointed story. My understanding is that. I looked into that a little bit. But so this, I guess, if you're looking at the first season as like a 10-hour movie, then this is probably a good point to drop this bombshell. But still, I cannot imagine how slow of a burn the previous 4 episodes were if we're only finding this out now.
Yes. I noticed that in the opening credits, the second build is Carla Gugino.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone doesn't know who that actress is, by name, she is in a lot of Zack Snyder's films. She's like Sally Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sally Jupiter in the Watchmen movie. And she's like the mom from Spy Kids. She's like an actress who works and like I recognize, and pretty good actress.
She was in The Tooth Fairy, I think, with Larry the Cable Guy. I'm sorry. But you were saying.
Yeah, equal thespians there. Carla Gugino and Larry the Cable Guy. Look, only one of these actors is in a Pixar film. That's all I'm gonna say. But like she's not in this episode. I saw that the thumbnail of the first episode, like Terrence Howard was in the thumbnail on Hulu. So I guess Terrence Howard is at least in one episode of this. I don't know, like, but Carla Gugino is not in this episode. And there were a few other, like, I don't know, like it said that Melissa Leo was in this. I mean, maybe she could have been. I didn't see her anywhere in this. So if she is, like, it's probably a really small role. Yeah, I was just, at least it was a small role in this episode. So maybe there's a lot more going on. And this is sort of just like the bombshell episode that just kind of tries to keep things like, okay, this is kind of going to be a smaller episode on a production level, but it's going to be a big episode on the story reveal level. So I don't know.
Looking at Internet Movie Database, Melissa Leo is credited as Nurse Pam. So was she the nurse who came in and gave the stink eye to the mom and that potential client, maybe?
I guess. I'm not sure.
Okay. I also, about 3/4 of the way into the episode, I thought, oh, Toby Jones was credited, but we're probably not going to see him. It was probably just like in credit only. Like I've been watching a lot of Star Trek TNG lately, and several episodes of TNG, like they will have Will Wheaton credited in an episode, but Wesley Crusher will not be in that episode. And I thought, oh, they're probably doing that with Toby Jones. And as soon as I was done thinking that, suddenly Toby Jones walks out of the helicopter, and I'm like, oh, welcome aboard, Mr. Jones. Yes.
Nice.
Also, the teacher, she was Tony Stark's mom in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Civil War.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't. In this episode, I was thinking she kind of looks like Carol Baskin, the Tiger King woman. I was kind of getting that vibe just from this episode. So, did we want to talk about the mom subplot where she's trying to figure out what's going on and she goes to talk to the guy?
Sure. Let's get into that one.
Okay, well, first of all, the mom is being like a weird helicopter mom where like she's like her son says, I'm going to walk to school with my friends. And she says, I thought we agreed that I was going to walk you to school and I was going to hold your hand and I was going to cut up your steak for you and I was going to tuck you in. And and I'm thinking like he looks like he's 35. I think he's okay. Like and maybe again, I haven't watched the previous 4 episodes. Maybe 300 people died in the previous episode. So she wants to keep him close. Okay. But she's being just really overbearing and horrible here. And like, I get that, like, they're probably going to do a thing where there's some kind of schism between the family where the kid wants to stay in town and the father, he wants to stay in town because he knows there's nothing left in the outside world, but he's not allowed to say anything because of reasons. And the mom says, I just want to go back to Seattle. And so they're going to do a thing where the family is divided on what they should do. And we're probably going to be against the kid because he is siding with the bad guys. And then the mom is going to be like our like POV character kind of where it's like we sympathize with her. But in this episode, I am 100% on this kid's side. Like I'm just like, let the kid go to school. He's found himself a little girl who looks like, since I'm on a roll here, I guess she looks like Lex's wife from Smallville season 3. I know you haven't watched Smallville, but she looks like if they took that actress and just like, you know, turned her into like a 20 something, like she looks a whole lot like that actress. But, yeah, he's like, it's a 5-minute walk to school. And she's like, you know, well, this town might be dangerous. It's like, okay, I agree with you. It probably is dangerous. But like, do you have any evidence for that to tell your 14-year-old kid or however old he is? Like, maybe, let him go to school with these kids. Like, I thought that was really weird. But yeah, so basically her kid runs off, and then she finds this note on her countertop, and she picks it up, and there was another note on the countertop as well, but I didn't see that. But then the note says, like, hey, you've been hired. Go meet so-and-so. And she meets Big Bill, and then he's like, there was someone else who was really wanting the job. And she's like, well, maybe that person's more qualified. And he says, nope, you've got the job. You just need to go and give a house to what's his name? And then she goes and talks to him, and he says, like, I saw something. There was something weird. And then she's like, well, there are all these microphones, so we need to go somewhere else. And I don't know, like, so at one point she turns on the washing machine and says, oh, look at that. The washing machine works. All right, now I need you to tell me everything that you know. And I was thinking, why not say, like, let's go out in the backyard. Look at this forest. You like forest, don't you, sir? Okay, like there's probably not a microphone in this tree. Like, go in the forest and have your conversation. But what all did you? I don't really have a lot to say about this subplot, but what did you think about this one?
Yeah, I also don't have a lot to say about it. It's one of those things where a lot of the reveals of the kids subplot is that they'll get a reveal there, cut to one of the other two subplots, and only for a little bit, and then it will cut back to the kids subplot. And it's sort of supposed to be like, okay, what we're seeing with the kid, it's sort of revealing something about this other subplot. I think like the previously on sort of gives this impression that there is a surveillance angle to this town.
Yeah.
And I think this is supposed to kind of try to keep up that sort of surveillance paranoia kind of a thing. And I beyond that, I don't really get a whole lot out of it. I guess she actually gets a gold star, which was weird, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, because Big Bill says, if you give away this house, you'll get a gold star. And then she comes back and he says, well, it looks like you get a gold star. And I don't know why he became Jimmy Stewart in my mind, but and then she's like, oh, you meant a literal gold star. And he's like holding a gold star out. And I actually kind of thought that was funny, but then it turned right into creepy again, where he's like, oh, I never joke about gold stars. And he puts it on her. And I was just like, ugh, like, okay. Like, but yeah, I wish, like, I guess I should give her props that she is earnestly investigating this. Like, she knows that they're being watched. She knows something is weird, but she's not going to let that deter her. I guess I should give it props for that. But I don't know, like, you're right. Most of the meat of this episode comes from the kids subplot at home. And so
I think maybe it is supposed to be like, okay, we're getting all these answers, but why is there all this surveillance?
Yeah.
I mean, like, why all this? So I think it is supposed to kind of keep up that level of intrigue. So.
And I probably have even less to say about the dad subplot. Most of his scenes, like 5 out of 6 of his scenes, are just him walking in the woods or laying down in the woods or something scratched his arm in the woods. And then, like, he meets Toby Jones, and then Toby Jones says, hey, come back to Wayward Pines with me. And he says, okay. And that's about it. And then, like, the werewolves almost attack them. And I guess,
well,
I mean...
Yeah, so basically what happens is there are these things called abbeys that are, like, in the woods. We find out that basically most of humanity has, like, evolved or devolved into these abbey creatures. And so... the Mad Dillon's, walking around the woods with a backpack and a gun, and then he gets scratched on the arm. He's sort of being hunted by these creatures, and he's, kind of outsmarting them until eventually he gets to, like, a cliffside and sees, like, the ruined remains of, I guess, Idaho. We didn't get a very good or long look at it. It kind of looks like Washington, D.C. to me, but maybe it's supposed to be like, he says, like, this is in Idaho. I know Idaho. Maybe it's like, infrastructure and buildings that were built much, much later. I don't know. But so he gets a ride back. So it's mostly just kind of supposed to be showing you the abbeys in action, I guess. So
yeah, and which might be a big deal if you hadn't seen them up until now. I'm trying to think of, like, in Lost, if you only knew, like, okay, there's something making noise in the woods, we don't know what it is, and then you have an episode that shows us, oh, it's a monster made out of smoke. Like, I guess that would be a big deal if you had been asking questions this whole time, what's in the woods? But for you and me, just jumping in, it's not really that big of a deal, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think like for myself, I know most people I talk to find these kinds of movies or TV episodes or books or whatever kind of boring, but I do really like people trying to survive in the woods kind of stories. Like I love me the reality show Survivor. I love me like The Martian is basically just a guy trying to survive on Mars for a while. I love those kinds of stories, and like it would have been cool if like a lot of this episode could have just been like a survivalist kind of episode of a guy trying to like not get hunted by the most dangerous game, bum bum bum, or something like that. That could have been fun. That could have been cool. There could have been like some really neat like kind of storytelling things you do. It could have been like a one man show. Well, one man and some creatures or whatever. I don't know. Like that could have been like really neat. And then at the end, you have the reveal that it's like you see like you get your Planet of the Apes ending, and then Toby Jones shows up and gives you some answers, and then we could be like, well, I guess I have to watch the rest of the show to figure out what that's all about. But you know, maybe there could be a couple of flashbacks of him talking to his son, talking to his wife. So like as an isolated episode, we can understand. Okay, he's remembering where he's coming from. He's coming from this place called Wayward Pines. There was some like weird questions he had, so he ventured out into the woods to get his answers, and now we're watching him kind of trying to survive in the woods, and then at the end he gets his answers. And I can be like, okay, I don't really know about any of these answers, but I've also not been watching the show, so that's fine. But I think that could have been really cool. Instead, it's just a lot of exposition, occasionally cutting to Matt Dillon and the mom.
Yeah. You just kind of put in my mind, I think maybe this whole reveal that this is the future would have been better if it was from Matt Dillon's point of view. Like when he first gets to the edge of the forest and he sees like the ruins of the city, that would be a huge deal if we hadn't just been told seconds earlier that this is 2,000 years later in words. Like there's a thing in screenwriting called show don't tell, and that's not always a rule you should follow, but in this case, I feel like it would have had more impact if we saw, hey, it's not just 2014, there's more going on here, and then you could have the woman say, little boys and girls, it's the year 4023 or something like that.
Yes, I agree with that.
I guess I'll say I liked Toby Jones here. I don't know him from a lot of stuff. I think he was in that Orlando movie that we talked about some time back. I liked him okay in the Captain America movies. I guess technically he was in the Harry Potter movies, but I think he's one of those big actors that I have just somehow missed a lot of his big performances. But I kind of liked him here. I didn't hate Matt Dillon. Of course, he wasn't in a lot of the episode. I'm going to say the mom might not be a bad actress, but the character she's playing was just kind of irritating to me. The kid was just kind of irritating to me, but I don't know. What did you think of the actors?
Yeah, I think the kid is just kind of stock, kind of whiny kid. I don't think he's really given a whole lot more to do. I thought that the mom made pretty much no impression on me. I'm sure she's a fine actress. She made no impression on me, and I think that like Matt Dillon just kind of looked distraught, and that's about all I can say about him. Yeah, I don't know. Like Toby Jones, like I guess kind of fun, mild connection. He is the son of I think the actress Freddie Jones.
Yes,
and
from Dune.
Yeah, and Freddie Jones was in a couple of David Lynch films. He was in Dune, and he was in The Elephant Man. So that's kind of a fun little connection. Yeah, Toby Jones is just mostly a character actor. I like him. I like it when he shows up and stuff, and he's fine in this. So that was, I guess, kind of cool. Like I don't know, the acting was largely okay, but a lot of it is just kind of like the actors are being asked to do things that I just don't typically find compelling. So I don't know. I guess this is the Twin Peaks connection is. This was directed by James Foley. I really don't have much to say about the direction. I'm sure it's consistent with the rest of the show, but that's all I can really say about it.
You are more of a film guy than I am. What was it that did he do? Glengarry Glen Ross?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Would you say that this is kind of like in league with some of his better film work, or is it just like consistent mediocre TV directing?
Well, that's the thing. I think James Foley ain't a great director, I don't think. He's mostly a for hire guy. I would compare him to Joel Schumacher, but I think Joel Schumacher is more stylish and has a more signature kind of look to his kind of movies. Um, like he did direct Glengarry Glen Ross. That was also a film adaptation of a stage play. And while I do really like that movie, the direction isn't why you watch that. You watch that because Jack Lemmon is a really good actor. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I mean, he directed the second and third 50 Shades movies. He directed this. He directed like that one episode of Twin Peaks. Like he's just, I think, trying to be just consistent with the rest of the show. If I had to guess, he does an adequate job, I suppose. But I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, it's probably pretty consistent with the show. I was watching an interview with Adam Nimoy, who is the son of Star Trek actor Leonard Nimoy, and Adam Nimoy had directed some Outer Limits episodes in the late 80s, early 90s, and he directed one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and he was saying in this interview that, like, when you come on a newer show, you're given a lot more freedom of, like, what to do. Like, you can put the camera here, and you can do this kind of angle and do this sort of thing, but he said when it's a show that is more firmly established, that you really are just, you walk in and they say, okay, put the camera here, the actor talks, and you catch the lines, and then you move on. And, even with 10 episodes, and you probably have a little bit of time to try and make those episodes look good, whereas like back in the 80s, like with Star Trek, you had 25 episodes in a season or whatever. You were really just trying to like, let's hurry up because we have to get this episode finished and move on to the next episode. But like, even here, I'm wondering how much of this was the showrunner is saying, like, yeah, you don't get to have creative freedom. Just do what you came here to do, and then we'll do the next episode.
Yeah, I am curious. So yeah, like this was actually executive produced by M. Night Shyamalan, and the Duffer Brothers, who would go on to do Stranger Things after this series was canceled.
Okay, I knew that the Duffers had done something else before Stranger Things. I couldn't remember if it was this show or something else, but okay. I will say, having watched, as of this recording, having watched all of Stranger Things, I think Stranger Things, at least when it started, is a much stronger show. I was actually of the opinion Stranger Things starts off really good, and then the next season is kind of good, and then the third season is like, it's okay. I think like season 1 of Stranger Things is doing a lot of the same stuff that this show is doing, where it's like you have some weird mystery and you've got these different characters who are going off and investigating this mystery in different ways. And those investigations kind of cross paths a little bit over the course of the series. But I feel like it worked a little better with Stranger Things, but I don't know if I'm saying that because I watched all of Stranger Things or if I feel like it just worked better on an episode by episode basis. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, who can say? That means you need to watch all 20 episodes of Wayward Pines and get back to me.
Yeah, I will get right on that. So I don't have anything else to say about this episode. I kind of regret choosing it, but I feel like every time I go blind into an episode of a TV show, I always learn something about, like, maybe I shouldn't have done this for this reason, or maybe I shouldn't have, did you have anything else to say?
Well, I'm glad you picked the Comics Kid. No, mostly just because, like, you always have these, like, kind of fun, off-the-wall kind of picks, and even if I don't like them, it's still, like, I mean, we've never talked about it before. Like, we're talking about stuff with this episode that we have not talked about in the, like, I don't know how many episodes we've done at this point. Well over 100, so, yeah. Like, I don't think I've ever talked about, like, my hang-up with, the crazy suburbs. Like, I haven't really gotten into that before, so that was kind of nice to talk about that. And like, this was a show that while it was on, I know like my mom and stepdad watched, and I have always been a little curious about it, so I'm glad you picked it. So
I am gonna ask, have you ever seen the Tom Hanks Carrie Fisher movie The Burbs?
I have not, but I do want to check it out because I know it's your favorite movie.
It is, and I guess fair warning, the plot is kind of sort of the crazy suburbs, but I don't know. I like that movie, so I'm not sure if that movie is doing what you're talking about or if it's kind of poking fun at what you're talking about.
What I understand is it's a comedy, right?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm sure I'll be cool. What I don't like is when people want to make like dramas about, like, the suburbs have this sheen of friendliness, but people are... What's up?
I've lived in the suburbs my whole life. It's not that weird. Hollywood. Like we're pretty okay here in the suburbs. I don't think I've ever had a Jeffrey Dahmer or a Ed Gein living next to me. Like I guess that's a possibility, but I don't know. Like we're pretty okay in the suburbs. I don't think that we're hiding some dark abomination under our carports.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where like people are like, whoa, they're like cookie cutter houses, and it's like we're all the same and we're being assimilated and TV dinners. I don't know. Like I get why someone wants to do that commentary. Like I understand there's like a lot of history with like white flight and like et cetera, and whatever. But like I at a certain point, like there's nothing to say. Like there's that George Clooney movie Suburbicon, which is just dreadful. Like that movie's awful. I think that was also trying to be a comedy, but it's failing horribly. I think a third of that movie is trying to be a comedy, while the other 2/3 are trying to be like a drama or like some kind of limp satire. So yeah, I don't know. I want to check out the Burbs though, because you've said good things about it. My stepmom really loves that movie. Joe Dante made it, so I'm sure it'll at least be like interesting and entertaining. So yeah.
So
I'll give it a shot.
Awesome. So Connor, it is that time for you to choose the next thing that we'll be talking about in a couple weeks.
All right. So I have been meaning to pick this as my Halloween October pick for literal years now, and every year I forget to pick it, but I will not forget this time. It is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is the one Halloween episode that has nothing to do with Michael Myers. We can get into that a little bit later, or when we talk about it. This features Dan O'Herlihy as the bad guy. He was Andrew Packard in the second season of Twin Peaks. So I'm really excited to talk about this because, I mean, this is famously one of the most hated horror movies in all of history. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah. If I wanted to play with fire, I'd start playing Donovan's Season of the Witch as soon as you said that. But I ain't going to toe to toe with YouTube. That's a fight someone else can make. I'm looking forward to watching this. Last year around October, I watched many of the Halloween movies out of order. I was at the mercy of my TV. My local library had the 2018 Halloween movie on DVD and the 1978 Halloween movie on DVD. Didn't have any of the others. And so if I wanted to watch one, I would just have to wait and see what order they came in on TV. I don't even remember which ones I watched. I watched one with Paul Rudd. I watched one where the TV producer guy fights Michael Myers with Kung Fu. I could tell you, like, okay, there's this one that has this actor in it, but I couldn't remember what order, or you know what I'm saying. But I'm looking forward to watching this because I have a feeling it's probably not as bad as its detractors say. I have a feeling, like you said, it doesn't have Michael Myers, and that's what people disliked about it. But I will say
I have seen it before, and I don't think it's as bad as its detractors say. So.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. So that is your warning, everyone. If you want to watch along with us, we will be talking about that in a couple weeks. In the meantime, I am the Comics Kid 2099.
And I am Connor Nielsen.
And we'll see you guys then. Have a good one.